Very good morning to all of you, my friends. I hope you guys are doing good. So, I hope further that you guys have solved all the questions of contract costing from the study material, plus the questions of MTP, RTPs, and past practice manual. So now, let's start with the next chapter. Again, a very important chapter from examination point of view. It's one of the method. It's one of a part of method of costing. So let's start, guys, with process costing. One second, there is a query, sir. In illustration number 4 of study material, value of work uncertified is given. See, Himanshu, in that question, I think you're talking about the illustration number 4, wherein I need to check, Himanshu, just give me some time. During the break, I'll just check the question and it'll address your query. Don't worry. So let's start with a fresh chapter, that is process costing. So let's start with process costing. Now, what is process costing? Now, this method of costing is used by those manufacturing concern wherein their raw material has to pass through 2 or more than 2 process before being converted into final product. जैसे कंस्ट्रक्शन कंपनीज जो है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कॉस्टिंग यूज करते हैं टू रिकॉर्ड द एक्सपेंडिचर्स दैट आर पर्टेनिंग टू अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, wherein this process costing is used by those company wherein their raw material, the raw material that has to pass through 2 or more than 2 process before being converted into final product. So this process costing is a method of costing used by those companies, those manufacturing concern wherein the raw material or input has to pass through 2 or more than 2 process before being converted into final product. So I repeat again, guys, the process costing is a method of costing used by those manufacturing companies wherein the raw material or input has to pass through 2 or more than 2 process before being converted into final product. So let's say how this mechanism works, wherein my raw material or input is introduced in a particular process, let's say process first. Now, once the process first gets over, the output of process first is transferred to the next process, let's say process second. Again, once the process second gets over, let's say the output is transferred to process third. Output of process second is transferred to process third. And let's say this is the final process involved in the manufacturing activity, and the output of process third is my final product. So this is how the mechanism works, wherein the input is put into process first, and now once the process first is completed, the output of the process first is transferred to process second. After process second, the output of process second is transferred to process third. And finally, this is the last process. So the output of process third will be the final product or final output. So this is how this method or mechanism works. So I repeat again for the students who have joined a bit late, we have started with process costing. This method of costing is used by those companies wherein the raw material has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. If you guys have any queries, you guys can please post your queries. Further, I request you guys to please copy this part. Very good morning, Krishna. I think you were absent in the previous sessions. Previous session, I think. Where is Darshan? Yes, Darshan. Any doubts? I think Darshan is present today. Komal, any doubts? Mr. Syed Yasir Ahmed. Ishan, any doubts? Varsha Shetty. No worries, Krishna. Very good morning, Sushil. Very good morning, Miss Singh, Rajiv Kumar. Very good morning, Kiran Shukla. Very good morning. Okay, Mr. Sahed, I think you are present today. I thought you are not present. Very good morning, Suman. So let me discuss this part practically with the help of an example. Very good morning, Hari Thakur. Very good morning, Miss Hira Hussain. So let me discuss this part practically with the help of an example, wherein, let's say I'm the manufacturer of potato chips. So this is my final output, that is potato chips. Now this is my final output, or we can say this is my final product. Now, these potato chips are made up of what? Potatoes. So my input or raw material is what? My input or raw material is what? Potatoes. So this is my input, or we can say the raw material. Now there are various processes involved in converting potatoes to potato chips. Let's say I procure these potatoes directly from farmer, and now let's say the first process starts, and the input is my potato. So the first process is, let's say, sorting and grading of potatoes. Sorting and grading. This is my process. First. Now the input we put up, हम लोग potatoes जो है input करते हैं in process first, and the process first is sorting and grading. Now after sorting and grading, the output of process first is, let's say, transferred to the next process, wherein we convert potatoes into potato chips. So let's say this is my second process. Now here in the output of process second is, let's say, transferred to the next process, wherein we add flavor and preservatives. Thereafter, let's say, after adding flavors and preservatives, the final process starts, that is the process 4, wherein we do packing and finishing. And once the potato chips are packed and finished, we can call it as the final output. So this is how this mechanism works, wherein we procure these potatoes directly from farmer. So my input is what? Potato. Now let's say the first process. Yes, Mr. Ahmed. Yes, Sonali, I'm discussing that example only. So herein, the first process is, let's say, sorting and grading of potatoes. Now the output of the process first is transferred to the next process, wherein we convert these potato into potato chips. Now after the potato chips are prepared, the output of the process second is transferred to the next process, wherein we add some sort of preservatives, flavors. Now, once the chips are ready in process third, let's say the output of process third is transferred to the next process, wherein we do the packing and finishing work, and thereafter the output of process 4 is my final output. The output of the process 4 is what my final product, we call it as the potato chips. So this is how this mechanism works. Further, since each process is unique, and separate set of costs are incurred for every process, therefore separate process account is to be prepared for every process. I repeat again, guys, since each process is unique and separate set of costs are incurred for every process, therefore we do prepare separate process account for every process to record the cost pertaining to that process. So I'm writing this for your reference, wherein since each process is unique and separate set of costs are incurred in every process, therefore we prepare separate process account for every process to record the cost pertaining to. So since each process is unique and separate set of costs are incurred in every process, therefore we prepare separate process account for every process to record the cost pertaining to that process. So this is how this mechanism works, and हर एक process different है, unique है. तो हर प्रोसेस की कॉस्ट को रिकॉर्ड करने के लिए हमें एक सेपरेट प्रोसेस अकाउंट बनाना पड़ेगा. सो हियर इन the process first account is prepared, the output of process first is transferred to the next process, thereafter process second account is to be prepared, process third account is to be prepared, process fourth account is to be prepared, and the output of the process fourth is my final product, that is my potato chips. So this is how this mechanism works. I repeat again, since each process is unique and different, therefore separate process account is to be prepared for every process to record the costs that are pertaining to a particular process. If you guys have any doubts, you guys can please post your query. Yes, Rushita. Yes, Darshan. I hope your query is resolved, Sonali. I request you guys to please copy this explanation. Good morning, Hari Thakur. Let me discuss this concept with the help of one more example. Let's say I'm the manufacturer of shirts. Now, I do manufacture fabric also and I do manufacture shirt also. So my raw material, my basic raw material will be what? Cotton. Now, I do manufacture only cotton shirts. So my raw material will be what? Cotton. Now the cotton is put into a particular process, let's say process first, wherein we convert cotton into thread. Thereafter, let's say the next process starts wherein we convert thread into a fabric. Thereafter, the output of second process will be the input for the third process, wherein we convert the fabric into a shirt. Again, thereafter, the next process wherein we do the packing and finishing activities, and the final output is what? My shirt. So again, conversion from cotton to a final product, that is shirt, involves many processes. In that industry also, we can use process costing. So Krishna, since each process is unique and separate set of costs are incurred in every process, therefore we prepare separate process account for every process to record the cost pertaining to that process. So now I hope this part is clear. That is what is process costing. Very simple, guys. Process costing में हमें process account बनाना है, which contain the details of all the costs that are incurred in a particular process. This process costing is used by those manufacturing concern where the raw material has to pass through various processes before being converted into final product. Now the point is how to prepare process account. That part will be discussing, sir, where different product is produced and every product need different process for each product. Yes, Himanshu. See, if from a particular process, two or more than two products emerge out, and further these products are further processed in different processes. So this part I'll be covering in the next chapter, that is joint and byproduct. But if a particular company is manufacturing many products, let's say 3 products, and every product require 2 or more than 2 processes, then for every product, separate process account is to be prepared for every process. So now, herein, the point is how to prepare process account. Process account में सारे expenditures record करने हैं of a particular process. हर process का एक separate process account होगा. Now the point is how to prepare process account. So very simple, guys. The format is very simple, guys, wherein units and amount units and I'm discussing the basic format of how to prepare process account. So let's say my input, so 2 inputs, we will write 2 inputs and the amount. Thereafter, whatever the costs that are incurred in a process, let's say wages, direct expenses, indirect expenses, now we'll get the output of this process, and that is to be transferred to process second. I'm preparing the basic pro forma of a process account. I'm ignoring normal loss, abnormal gain, guys. So this is how the basic process account is to be prepared, wherein the inputs, my wages, my direct expenses, my indirect expenses will be shown in the debit side of process account, and the output of process first is transferred to the next process, let's say process second. Now, when talking about process second, so when talking about process second, the output of process first is to be transferred to the next process, that is process second. So we'll first record the input that is we have received from process first. So to process first. Thereafter, again, the additional costs that are incurred, that is wages, direct expenses, indirect expenses, and further, let's say there are only 2 processes involved in the manufacturing activity. So we can say the output of the process second is to be transferred to finished stock. So this is how the basic process account is to be prepared, wherein the output of process first is transferred to next process, that is process second. Now in process second, we will receive the input that we have received from process first, and thereafter the costs that are incurred separately in that process. So this is how the basic process account is prepared. If you guys have any queries in this part, you guys can please post your queries. Can you please post your query in detail, Darshan? Okay, let's say I'll be discussing this part in the next session. Don't worry, Darshan. I got it what you want to ask. So don't worry, I'll be discussing this part in the next session. Rest all, anyone having any doubts in process account, how to prepare process account, you guys can please post your queries. Waiting for your queries, guys. Yes, Sudhanshu, the basis of apportionment will always be given in the question. Don't worry. Yes, anything is possible, Mayur Gupta. There can be opening balance of work in progress. There can be closing balance of work in progress. I'll be discussing in the next, I'll be discussing the treatment of work in progress in the next session. Yes, Bhumika. Yes, Mr. R. Wahida Afreen. Again, the weightage of the chapter is 8 to 12 marks. Anyone having any doubts, guys? I request you guys to please open the study material. Also, I request you guys to please download the material that I have provided. I request you guys to please download the material what I have provided. I'll be discussing this part also, Diksha. Don't worry. Have some patience, my dear. I have provided the notes on process costing. So I request you guys to please download these notes. I'm sharing the screen for your reference. So guys, when talking about the meaning of process costing, this is a method of costing used by the industries wherein the raw material has to pass through two or more than two processes before being converted into final product. A separate process account for each process is opened and all the expenditure pertaining to a process is charged to that process account. Further, again, input input is transferred to process first, the output of process first is transferred to process second, and the output of process second is transferred to finished goods. This is how the normal process account is to be prepared, wherein the material input will write first, thereafter labor, other expenses. I request you guys to ignore any abnormal gain, abnormal loss, and normal loss. I'll be discussing this part separately. So the output of process first is transferred to the next process. When talking about process second, we'll first write the input that is received from process first, and thereafter the other costs that are incurred in the process, and further the output of process second is transferred to finished goods account. So this is how the basic process account is to be prepared. Now, before starting with the remaining part, let me give you a brief about what all we'll be covering in this chapter. So the points what we'll be discussing in this chapter, that is the meaning of process costing, that is already covered. Thereafter, we'll be discussing normal loss, abnormal gain. Thereafter, how to value work in progress and equivalent production. And thereafter, we'll be discussing a question on inter-process profit. So this is all what we'll be discussing in this chapter. So before starting, let's discuss a basic question wherein we'll be preparing the basic process account. So I'm discussing the question number 1 from my material. Further, similar question is there in the study material. So I request you guys to please open the study material, or you can download the notes from the portal. So let's start with illustration number 1 of the study material. Again, the same question is there in my notes also. In slide number 6, example 1 basic. So let's start with example 1 or illustration number 1 of study material. Now, from the following data, prepare process account indicating the cost of each process and the total cost. The total unit that passed through each process were 240 for the period. Further, the cost of material, labor, and other expenses for all the 3 processes are given. Further, indirect expenses amounting to rupees 85,000 may be apportioned on the basis of wages. There is no opening or closing stock. So guys, let's start with illustration number 1. Now in this question, no information is given about normal loss, abnormal gain. Further, the question is asking us to calculate the cost per unit also and the total cost. So instead of preparing the units column, we'll be preparing per unit cost and total cost. So let's start with illustration number 1 of the study material and example number 1 of the material what I have provided. So let's start with process first. We'll prepare process first account. wherein 2 material is, again, the units that are introduced in the process is 240 units. Further, two material, two labor, and two other expenses. One lakh 50,000, 80,000, and 26,000. So 1,50,000, 80,000, and 26,000. Further, it is given in the question that indirect expenses amounting to rupees 85,000 may be apportioned on the basis of wages. So two indirect expenses also will record. It is to be distributed in the ratio of wages when talking about the wages paid. The ratio of wages paid is 80,000 is to 2 lakh is to 60,000. So 80 is to 200 is to 60. One second, guys. So this will be 20,000. Output is transferred to the next process, that is process second. So 150 plus 80 plus 20 plus 26. 2,76,000. Now we'll calculate the per unit cost also, that is 150 divided by 240. So this will be 625. 80,000 divided by 240. This will be 333.33. This will be 26,000 divided by 240. That is 108.33. 20,000 divided by 240. This will be 83.33. So this will be 115. Process second account. wherein the input will be the output received from process first. So 2 process first, that is 1150 and 2,76,000. Thereafter 2 material, 2 labor, 2 other expenses, and 2 indirect expenses. Further, when talking about material, the material cost is 50, 2 lakh and 72. 50,000, 2 lakh, 72,000 and 50,000. So 50,000 divided by 240. So this will be 208.33. Now we'll prepare process third account. When talking about material cost, it is 20,000. and the output of process third is to be transferred to finished stock account. So this will be 83.33. This will be 250. So this is how the process account is prepared, wherein no information is given in the question as regards normal loss, and abnormal gain. So this is the way you guys have to prepare the basic process account. If you guys have any queries as regards the concepts and presentation related issues, you guys can please post your queries, giving you 2 minutes time. So waiting for your queries, guys. Okay, Darshan. So there is a query from Darshan, sir. Under which circumstances should we prepare units column and cost per unit column in process account? So when no information is given in the question as regards normal loss, abnormal gain, and further the question is asking you to calculate the cost per unit, then we will prepare the process account in this way, wherein the per unit cost and the total amount. However, if in any question the information is given as regards the normal loss, or abnormal gain, then yes, you have to prepare the process account like particulars, units, and amount. It is given in the question, Anisha. Yes, Diksha, you can. Yes, Rushita, the chapter is very easy, but yes, you have to practice a lot. This is the easiest question. Many more points need to be discussed. Aditya Jain, I don't have any sort of Telegram channel or group. Waiting for your queries, guys. Anisha, it is given in the question 240 units. Miss Wahida Afreen, any doubts? Krishna, any doubts? Mayur Gupta, Sudhanshu, Himanshu, Kiran Shukla, any doubts? No, my dear. No, Miss Singh, Rajiv Kumar. Units cannot be rounded off. It is given in the question, Krishna, that indirect expenses are to be distributed in the ratio of direct wages. So the direct wages is in the ratio of 80 is to 200 is to 60. So this is how I calculated the value of indirect expenses. Yes, Rajesh, Wahida, any doubts? Bhumika? Yes, in every question you have to prepare units column. Not per unit, but yes, unit column you have to prepare because some information will be given in the question as regards normal loss or abnormal loss. I'll be discussing this part now. So now let's proceed further. We are done with the basic process account, that is how to prepare basic process account. Now let's move towards the next part of the chapter, that is normal loss. Now, what is normal loss? So let's start with normal loss. Now, what is normal loss? See, guys, due to the nature of product or production loss, due to the nature of product or production process, this loss is bound to happen. The loss that is bound to happen is normal loss. What is normal loss? Due to the nature of product or production process, the loss that is bound to happen is प्रोडक्ट का या प्रोडक्शन प्रोसेस का नेचर ही ऐसा है कि ये लॉस तो होना ही है, दैट इज नॉर्मल लॉस. लेट्स से आई एम द मैन्युफैक्चरर ऑफ पोटैटो चिप्स फ्रॉम पोटैटोज. नाउ लेट्स से आई प्रोक्योर दीज पोटैटोज डायरेक्टली फ्रॉम फार्मर्स. अ पोटैटो इज ऑफ पेरिशेबल नेचर, सो लोडिंग और अनलोडिंग के टाइम कुछ परसेंट पोटैटोज डैमेज होंगे ही. वी कांट अवॉइड इट. So that is what we call as normal. I repeat again, guys, I'm the manufacturer of potato chips from potatoes. I procure these potatoes directly from farmers. Now, during the process of loading or unloading, kuch percent potatoes damage ho gayi because this is the nature of the product. So we call it as normal loss. Another example, let's say I'm into business of processing of crude oil. Now, I process crude oil and convert it into petrol, diesel, gasoline, kerosene, CNG, whatever it is. Now, during this process, certain percentage of crude oil is evaporated. I can't avoid it because this is the nature of the product. So, that percentage of crude oil that is evaporated is what we call as normal. Another example, let's say I'm the manufacturer of wooden furniture. Now while manufacturing furniture, कुछ percent wood जो है मुझे scrap करना ही पड़ता है. I can't avoid it. So this is what we call as normal loss. So when talking about the normal loss, due to the nature of product or production process, the loss that is bound to happen is normal loss. Now this normal loss can be predicted by management well in advance, because इंडस्ट्री ऐसा ही है और अगर सालों से हम लोग अगर मैन्युफैक्चर कर रहे हैं तो वी कैन प्रेडिक्ट दिस नॉर्मल लॉस वेल इन एडवांस. सो कैन बी प्रेडिक्टेड in advance. As I said, it is bound to happen, so we can call it as unavoidable also. I've used one. So this normal loss is what we call as unavoidable. हम लोग चाह के भी नॉर्मल लॉस अवॉइड नहीं कर सकते. So can be predicted well in advance. Further, when talking about the treatment of normal loss, how to treat normal loss in process account, when talking about the treatment of abnormal loss, the value, normal loss, my mistake. So when talking about the treatment of normal loss, the value of normal loss will be absorbed by good units. Again, when talking about the treatment of normal loss, the cost of normal loss is to be absorbed by good units. The cost of normal loss is absorbed by good units. Further, any amount realized on sale of scrap is to be deducted from total process. So when talking about the normal loss due to the nature of product or production process, the loss that is bound to happen is normal loss. We call it as unavoidable. The normal loss is unavoidable. It can be predicted well in advance. Further, when talking about the treatment of normal loss in process account, very simple guys, the cost of normal loss is to be absorbed by good units. Normal loss की वजह से product cost inflate होगा. So, wherein the cost of normal loss is to be absorbed by good unit. Further, if any amount is realized on sale of scrap, it will be deducted from the total process cost or the total product cost. I'll be discussing this part with the help of an example. If you guys have any queries till now, you guys can please post your queries. I request you guys to please copy this part. The normal loss due to the nature of product or production process, the loss that is bound to happen is normal loss, can be predicted in advance. When talking about the treatment, the cost of normal loss is absorbed by good units. Further, any amount realized on sale of scrap is to be deducted from the total process cost to calculate the product cost. Any doubts? Bhumika, Rajesh, Hira Hussain, Arunima, Hare Krishna, Mayur Gupta, Miss Singh, Rajiv Kumar, Bhumika, Darshan, Kiran. Anyone having any doubts? Waiting for your queries, guys. So, cost of normal loss is absorbed by good units. Further, any amount realized on sale of scrap is to be deducted from the total process cost to calculate the product cost. I'll be discussing the concept of normal loss with the help of an example. Let's say my input is 10,000 units. Let's say my input is 10,000 units and the cost of the process cost is, let's say, 1,80,000 rupees. I made an input of 10,000 units and let's say my process cost is 1,80,000 rupees. Now, it's very easy for us to calculate the cost per unit. Herein, when talking about the calculation of cost per unit, it's very simple. That is, my process cost is 1,80,000 divided by my input, that is 10,000 units. Input output. I made an input of 10,000 units. I have made an input of 10,000 units and I'm getting an output of 10,000 units. So herein, my output is 10,000 units and my cost is 1,80,000 units. So my cost per unit will be very simple, that is rupees 18 per unit. Now, let's take a different situation wherein my input is 10,000 units. However, it is given in the question that there is a normal loss at the 10% of inputs. It is given in the question that there is a normal loss of 10% of inputs. So herein, my normal loss will be how much? It is 10% of input. So my normal loss will be of how many units? 1,000 units. Therefore, my output will be how much? 9,000 units. I repeat again, in the first situation, I have taken as input of 10,000 and my output is 10,000. मेरा input भी 10,000 था, मेरा output भी 10,000 था, and my process cost was 1,80,000. So we can easily calculate the cost of the process. That is, the cost per unit will be 1,80,000 divided by my 10,000 units. So 18 per unit will be my cost per unit. But let's take a different situation wherein my input is 10,000 units. However, there is a normal loss of 10% of input, that is 1,000 units. Therefore, my output will be how much? Very simple, guys, 9,000 units. Now, in this case, my cost per unit will be how much? 1,80,000 is my total cost of the process, and my output is now how much? 9,000 units. So my cost will be rupees 20 per unit. So herein what we can see, that the cost of these 1,000 units, the cost of these 1,000 units is absorbed by remaining 9,000 units. So we call it as the treatment of normal loss. When talking about the treatment of normal loss, cost of normal loss is to be absorbed by 1,000 units. And this is the reason why the product cost is inflated from 18 to 20 rupees. Normal loss की वजह से हमारा product cost क्या हो गया? Inflate हो गया. Because the loss of these 1,000 units is absorbed by remaining 9,000 units. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your queries. I repeat again, when talking about the treatment of normal loss, the normal loss is to be absorbed. The cost of the normal loss is to be absorbed by good units, that is the output. So that is the reason why, due to normal loss, the product cost is inflated. Because वो cost जो 10,000 units absorb कर रहा था, now the same cost is absorbed by 9,000 units. Yes, Diksha. Let's take one more situation. Let's say the scrap is sold at the rate 4.5 per unit. Herein it is given in the question that the scrap, that is the units that are scrap, can be sold in the market at the rate 4.5 per unit. It means every unit is sold at the rate of 4.5 per unit as scrap. So herein, in this question, in this case, my total process cost is 1,80,000. However, we are getting 4.5 per unit as scrap value of the scrap that is sold in the market. So these 1,000 units is my normal loss, and these units can be sold in the market at the rate 4.5. And my final output is how much? 10,000 minus 1,000, that is 9,000 units. Therefore, 1,80,000 is my total cost. उसमें से 4,500 हमें realize हो गए. So my net cost is how much? 175,500. And my output is how much? 9,000 units. So it means my cost per unit will be how much? Very simple. The cost per unit will be how much? 19.5 per unit. So as I told you guys, if any scrap value is realized on sale of normal loss, अगर normal loss के units को हम लोगों ने market में sell किया है, so if any scrap value is realized, it will be reduced from the total cost to calculate the cost per unit or to calculate the product cost. So herein, I have realized rupees 4.5 paisa per unit on sale of the units that are scrapped. So 1,80,000 is my total cost. उसके बदले हमें realize कितना हुआ है against this? We have realized 4,500. So in aggregate, how much is my total cost? 175,500 for my output, that is 9,000 units. So my cost per unit will be 19.5. So this is the treatment of normal loss. So very simple. Due to the nature of product or production process, the loss that is bound to happen is normal loss. It cannot be avoided. It is predicted by management well in advance. Now, when talking about the treatment of normal loss, very simple, guys. The cost of normal loss is to be absorbed by good units. तो ये जो 1000 यूनिट्स का लॉस है, ये रिमेनिंग 9000 यूनिट्स क्या कर लेंगे? अब्सॉर्ब कर लेंगे. If any scrap value is realized on sale of normal, so if any scrap value is realized on sale of scrap, then it will be reduced to calculate the total cost of the product or to calculate the cost per unit. If you guys have any doubts, any conceptual queries in normal loss, then you guys can please post your queries. Further, I request you guys to please copy this explanation. So giving you 5 minutes time, whatever the queries you have, you guys can please post your queries. Yes, Rajesh, it is. Krishna, it is given in the question that normal loss is at the rate of 10% of inputs. So waiting for your queries, guys. Jagat Babu Sharma, Rushita, Krishna, Rajesh, Hira Hussain, Mayur Gupta, Darshan, Bhumika, Kiran Shukla, Aditya Jain. Anyone having any doubts? Waiting for your queries, guys. So there are a few queries. So let me address all your queries. I'll be discussing this part again. When talking about the first situation, my input is of 10,000, my output is of 10,000. मेरा input भी 10,000 था, मेरा output भी 10,000 था. So the process cost is 1,80,000 divided by my output, that is 10,000 units. So we can easily calculate the cost per unit. Now in second case, there is a normal loss. It is given in the question that there is a normal loss of 10% of input. So very simple, guys. 10,000 units, there is a normal loss of 10% of input. So my normal loss will be 1,000 units. Therefore, my output will be how much? 9,000 units. Now, वो cost जो 10,000 units absorb कर रहे थे, now it will be absorbed by 9,000 units. So herein, 1,80,000 is my total cost divided by 9,000 units. So this is how I got the final cost per unit, that is 20 per unit. Now in the third case, let's say these 1,000 units can be sold in the market at the rate 4.5. So how much amount I'll be getting back? 4,500 will be the value that is realized on sale of scrap. So my process cost is 1,80,000. I am recovering 4,500 of what? Of the units that are sold in the market, that is the scrap units that are sold in the market. So my net process cost will be how much? 175,500. Further, when talking about the output, my output is how much? 10,000 minus 1,000, 9,000 units. So 175,500 divided by 9,000 units. So this is how we will calculate the cost per unit. So when talking about the formula, very simple, guys. When talking about the calculation of cost per unit, the formula is very simple. The process cost minus the scrap value realized on sale of normal loss divided by, very simple, inputs, that is 10,000 is my input minus normal. So process cost is 1,80,000 minus scrap value realized on sale of normal loss, that is 4,500 divided by my inputs, that is 10,000 minus 1,000 is my normal loss. So this is how the cost per unit is to be calculated. So again, there are no formulas in process costing. It's all concept. If you guys have any queries, then please post your queries. Rushita, hopefully your query is resolved. Rushita, Dikshita, and Bhumika, and Krishna. Rushita, Krishna, Bhumika, hopefully your queries are resolved. Miss Dikshita, Bhumika, the formula, again, there is no formula. It's simply the concept wherein my process cost is 1,80,000 minus scrap value realized on sale of normal loss, that is 4,000 divided by my input, that is 10,000 minus 1,000 is my normal loss. So let's start with a question that is there in the material what I have provided. Example number 2, normal loss. So let's start with example number 2 on normal loss. The material cost is 1,000. The material is for 1,000 units at the rate 100. 1 lakh. Labor cost is 1,50,000. Other expenses are 50,000. Scrap value realized is 12,000. And the normal loss is 10%. Prepare process account and calculate the cost of good units transferred. So let's start with example number 2. Arunima, hopefully your query is resolved. So to material, 1,000 units and 10,000 units is the total cost. To labor, 1,50,000. Two other expenses in. Further, by normal loss, it is given in the question that the normal loss is at the rate of 10% of input. So the normal loss is of 100 units. And further, the scrap value realized on sale of normal loss is 12,000 rupees. By process second, total 900 units are transferred. So herein, when talking about the calculation of cost per unit, very simple guys, the total cost of the process, that is 150 plus 50, 2 lakh, 2 lakh plus 10,000. Sorry, 150 plus 10, 160 plus 5,000, that is 1,65,000. Sorry, it is 1 lakh. So 1 lakh is the cost of the material, 1,50,000 is the labor cost, and 50,000 are the other expenses. So my total cost will be how much? 3 lakh minus the scrap value realized on sale of scrap is 12,000. Now 1,000 is my input, 100 units is my normal loss. So my cost per units we can easily calculate. That is 3 lakh is the total cost minus 12,000 is the scrap value realized, and my expected output is how much? 900 units. So my cost per unit will be rupees 320. When talking about how normal loss account is prepared, to process account 100 units and they are sold for 12,000 by bank. Since they are sold in the market and we are realizing something in cash, so 100 and 12,000. So this is how normal loss account is to be prepared. I hope after this question you guys are thorough with the concept of normal loss. Again, the formula is same, that is the total process cost minus scrap value realized. So the net cost of the process is how much? 2,88,000, and my output is how much? 900 units. So the cost per unit of output is how much? 320. Anyone having any doubts in this part? You guys can please post your query. Further, I request you guys to please copy the solution. I request you, Arunima, to please download the notes what I have provided over the portal. So enough of discussion on normal loss. Now let's start with the next part of the chapter, that is abnormal loss. So when talking about abnormal loss, guys, the loss in excess of predetermined loss is abnormal loss. The loss in excess of predetermined loss is abnormal loss. What is abnormal loss? When talking about the meaning of abnormal loss, the loss in excess of predetermined loss. The loss in excess of predetermined loss is, when talking about predetermined loss, we can call it as normal loss also. The loss in excess of normal loss is what we call as abnormal loss. Now ये loss होता क्यों है? Very simple, guys. It occurs due to bad plant design or due to carelessness of workers. It occurs due to bad plant design or carelessness of worker, or due to abnormal reasons, that is either theft, accident, etc. So occurs due to bad plant design or carelessness of workers or abnormal reason. Further, this abnormal loss cannot be predicted in advance. कौन प्रेडिक्ट करेगा कि फ्यूचर में हमारे वर्कर्स जो है केयरलेसनेस करेंगे या फ्यूचर में कुछ थेफ्ट होगा या लॉस बाय फायर होगा. So this abnormal loss cannot be predicted in advance. cannot be predicted in advance. Further, it can be avoided if suitable measures are taken care of. Can be kept under control with suitable. So what is abnormal loss? The loss in excess of normal loss is abnormal loss. It can be avoided if suitable measures are taken care of. Further, it occurs due to bad plant design or carelessness of worker or due to abnormal reasons. Let me discuss this with the help of an example, wherein let's say I am the manufacturer of potato chips from potatoes. Now, loading and unloading के time अगर कुछ percentage potatoes damage होते हैं, we call it as normal loss. But let's say during transit from farm to my factory, 3 of my goods transport vehicle met accident. And let's say 2,000 tons of potatoes were damaged or scrapped or spoiled because of this accident. Now, ये accident किसी ने predict नहीं किया था. So, if अगर suitable measures हम लोग implement करते तो शायद we would have avoided this accident. So, that the loss of these 1,000 tons due to accident is what we call as my abnormal loss. Further, when talking about the treatment of abnormal loss, the treatment is very simple, wherein the value of abnormal loss will be the value of the abnormal loss units will be equal to the value of good units. Value of abnormal loss units will be equal to the value of good units. Further, the abnormal loss is shown in credit side of process account and thereafter transferred to costing. So abnormal loss is shown in the credit side of process account and thereafter it is transferred to costing P&L. So this is all what about abnormal loss. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your query. Further, I request you guys to please copy this explanation. Any doubts, anyone? the value of abnormal loss will be equal to the value of good units. Further, abnormal loss is shown in the credit side of process account and thereafter transferred to costing P&L. Now let's say I made an input of 10,000 units. I have made an input of 10,000 units. And let's say, sorry, my process cost is 1,80,000. Now I'm expecting a normal loss of at the rate of 10% of input. So my normal loss is 1,000 and 9,000 I'm expecting as an output. 9,000 is what? My expected output. I repeat again, guys. 10,000 is my input. I have predicted well in advance that there is a normal loss of 10% of input. So therefore, I have predicted that my output will be how much? 9,000 units. Now, when the actual results were out, my actual output was only 8,800 units. When the actual results were out, my actual output was only 8,800 units. It means my actual output is less than expected output. Therefore, these 200 units is what my abnormal. I repeat again, guys, I have made an input of 10,000 units. I have made an input of 10,000 units. And I was expecting an output of 9,000 units because the management has predicted well in advance that there will be a 10% normal loss of inputs. So herein, my expected output is how much? 9,000. However, when the actual results were out, my actual output was only 8,800 units. So it means what? 200 units is what my abnormal loss. That is, since my actual production is less than my expected production, the extra units, that is the loss of these extra units, is what my abnormal loss. Further, when talking about how to calculate the cost per unit, see, 1,80,000 is my process cost. Assuming no scrap value is realized on sale of scrap, how much is my expected output? Very simple, 10,000 minus 1,000, that is 9,000. So my cost per unit will be rupees 20. Again, guys, very important, abnormal loss की वजह से product cost inflate नहीं होगा. 1,80,000 divided by 8,800 नहीं करेंगे. We will reduce only 10,000. We will deduct only 1,000. That is 10,000 minus 1,000, 9,000. We will not consider 8,800 as our output. We will consider only 9,000 as our output. So the product cost will not be inflated because of abnormal loss. So this is how we will calculate the cost per unit, that is 20 per unit. When talking about the value of output, very simple, guys. The value of finished goods will be how much? 8,800 into 20, and abnormal loss value will be how much? 200 into 20. So this will be 4,000 and this will be 1,76,000. Cost per unit formula change नहीं होगा. Product cost inflate नहीं होगा because of abnormal loss. The cost per unit will be same, but yes, the value of As I told you guys, the value of abnormal loss will be equal to the value of good units, and this amount is to be transferred to costing P&L. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your queries. When talking about abnormal loss, guys, abnormal loss से product cost inflate नहीं होगा. The value of abnormal loss will be equal to the value of good units. It will be shown on the credit side of process account, and thereafter it is to be transferred to costing P&L. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your query. I request you guys to please copy the explanation. Waiting for your queries, guys. This part is very important. So let me know if you guys have any queries. Darshan, Bhumika, Arunima, Jagat Babu, Kiran Shukla, Krishna. Any doubts? Rajesh? Waiting for your queries, guys. I repeat again this example, 10,000 is my input. The management has predicted well in advance that the normal loss will be 10% of input. So my expected output is 9,000. However, when the actual figures were out, my actual output was only 8,800 units. It means what 200 units is my abnormal loss. Now the point is how to value this abnormal loss. The value of abnormal loss will be equal to the value of good units. When talking about how to calculate the value of good units, very simple. Process cost minus scrap value realized sale on sale of normal loss divided by expected output. That is input minus normal loss. Yes, anyone having any queries? Arunima, Dikshita, Krishna, Rushita. You want break, Rushita? I'll be discussing this part, don't worry. So let's start with a question wherein we'll be discussing the concept of abnormal loss. So I'm discussing example number 3 of my material, that is abnormal loss and abnormal gain. So let's start with example number 3 of my material. A product passes through two processes, that is process first and process second. A product passes through two processes, that is process first and process second, wherein material issued to process first is 40,000 rupees, 5,000 units at the rate 8. Wages were 30,000, manufacturing overheads were 27,000. The normal loss was anticipated as 5% of input. Further, 4,500 units of 4,550 units of output were produced and transferred out from process first. Scrap as a realizable value of rupees 2 per unit. You are required to prepare process first account, value of abnormal loss and abnormal gain, and the units transferred to the next process. So let's start with example number 3. To material is 5,000 units and 40,000 rupees. Further, to wages is 30,000 rupees. Sorry. Manufacturing overheads are 27,000 rupees. By normal loss, it is given in the question itself that the normal loss is 5% of input. Now herein, my inputs are 5,000 and my normal loss is 5% of inputs. So my expected output is how much? Very simple, 5,000 minus 250, that is 4750. My expected output is 4750 units. However, my actual output is how much? It is given in the question that the actual output is 4550. So we can say there is an abnormal loss of 200 units. So further, it is given in the question also that the by process second 4550. So we can call it as balancing figure also. We can call it as balancing figure also. Now further it is given in the question that the scrap has a realizable value of rupees 2 per unit. So the scrap value realized is how much? 500. Now the question is what will be the value of abnormal loss and what will be the value of units transferred to the next process. So the first point is due to abnormal loss, the product cost is not inflated. Further, the value of abnormal loss will be equal to the value of good units. Now the question is how to calculate. Very simple, guys. My process cost is how much? 40 plus 30 plus 27. That is 97,000 minus 500 I am recovering on sale of normal loss divided by my expected output. That is 5,000 is my input minus 250 is my normal loss. Again, the product cost will not be inflated. We will not subtract the abnormal loss units. Why? Because अगर abnormal loss units अगर subtract कर दिया तो product cost inflate होगा, and this approach is incorrect. So that's why we will deduct only the normal loss unit, that is 250 units. So the value will be 20.32. So when talking about the value of abnormal loss, 200 into 20.32, this will be 4064. Ultimately, what we are doing is we are apportioning this net cost of 96,000, that is 40, 96,500, that is 40 plus 30 plus 27 minus 500. Ultimately, we are apportioning 96,500 in the ratio of 200 is to 450. So this is how the abnormal loss will be treated in process account. Further, when talking about abnormal loss account, again, it's very simple. Now we will assume that just like the normal scrap units, this normal loss units are sold in the market. These units will also be sold in the market. So by bank, 200 units, we will assume that it will be sold in the market at the rate 2 per unit. So 400. And the balance will be transferred to costing P&L. That is 3664. We will assume the abnormal loss units will realize the same scrap value as given for normal. If you guys have any queries in this part, you guys can please post your queries. Waiting for your queries, guys. Yes, Darshan, Bhumika, any doubts? Jagat Babu Sharma, Arunima Sinha, Dikshita, Rushita, Hare Krishna Tiwari, Diksha Agrawal, Jaydev Singh, any doubts? Mayur Gupta. Waiting for your queries, guys. Yes, Darshan, any doubts? So for you, Krishna, we will assume that the abnormal loss units will realize the same scrap value as given for normal loss. Further, when talking about abnormal loss, it's two process account, 200 units, 4064. Now, assuming these 200 units will realize the same scrap value that is given for normal loss. So, assuming that these units are sold in the market, so 200 units into 2 rupees. So, we will realize 400 rupees on sale of these 200 units, and the balance amount is to be transferred to costing P&L. Yes, Imanshu. So when talking about this question, this information is given in the question. 5,000 is the input. The total value is 40,000, wages is 30,000, manufacturing overheads are 27,000. By normal loss, it is given as 5% of input, so normal loss is 250 units, and the amount realized in sale of normal loss is 500 units. Now my output is 4550. It means the abnormal loss will be how much? 200 units. Now the question is how to calculate the value of abnormal loss and good units. The value for both will be the same. So very simple, guys. The basic formula, that is the process cost 97,000 minus the scrap value realized on sale of normal loss, that is 500, divided by my expected output, that is input minus normal loss. Process cost minus the same formula for the entire chapter, scrap value realized on sale of normal loss units whole divided by my expected output, that is inputs minus normal. I hope the treatment of I hope that you are now I hope you are thorough with the treatment, Rajesh. Anyone having any doubts? Waiting for your queries, guys. Now, let's start with the next part, that is abnormal gain. Now, what is abnormal gain? When the actual production exceeds the expected production, it is abnormal gain. When the actual production exceeds the expected production, it is abnormal gain. Let's say I have made an input of 10,000 units. I'm expecting a normal loss at the rate of 10% of input, so 1,000. So therefore, my expected output is how much? $9,000 units. However, let's say when the actual results were out and my actual output was, let's say 9,500 units. I repeat again, when the actual figure, my actual output was much more than what I expected. So these 500 units is what? My abnormal. हमने एक्सपेक्ट किया था कि after deducting the normal loss we will be getting an output of 9,000 units, मगर जब actual figures पता चले तो actual output was 9,500 units. Once sorry. So when the actual figures were out, my actual output was 9,500 units. It means 500 units more than what we expected. So these 500 units is what my abnormal gain. So when the actual production exceeds the expected production, that is abnormal gain. It may be due to wrong estimation or efficiency of workers. Further, when talking about abnormal gain, again, similar to abnormal loss, the value of abnormal gain will be equal to the value of good units. Further, it will be shown in debit side of costing. It will be shown in debit side of process account and thereafter transferred to costing P&L. So I'm sharing the screen for your reference. So when talking about the meaning of abnormal gain, when the actual production exceeds the expected, for which abnormal gain arises, is debited with the abnormal gain and credited to abnormal gain account, which will be closed by transferring it to the costing P&L. The cost of abnormal gain is computed on the basis of normal production, that is the expected production, just like the abnormal loss. So let's start with the practical questions. The same example I'm discussing, that is example number 3 in case of abnormal gain. The second part also answer if the output is 4850. So let's start with abnormal gain. Now herein in this second case, it is given that also answer if the output is 4850. Now 5,000 is my input, 250 is my normal loss. It means my expected output is how much? 4750. I was expecting an output of only 4,000. Sorry guys, I was expecting an output of 4750. How come 5000 minus 250? I was expecting an output of 4750 units. However, when the actual figures were out, my actual output was 4850. That is 100 units, much more, 100 units more than what I expected. So these 100 units is what? My abnormal gain. Now again, the calculation of cost per unit will be the same, wherein my total cost of the process is 97,000 minus 500 is the scrap value realized on sale of normal loss, divided by 5,000 is my input, minus 250. So my cost per unit will be same. Yes, very good, Rushita. So 96,500 divided by 4750. So guys, this is how the treatment will be done when it is normal loss, that I mean if abnormal gain is given in the question. So this is how to treat abnormal gain in process account. If you guys have any doubts till now, you guys can please post your query. Hopefully, Syed Yasir Ahmed, your query is resolved. Now, guys, do make a note of it. Very important, guys. Whether if only normal loss is there, whether if any abnormal loss is there, whether if any abnormal gain is there, the cost per unit will always remain same. I repeat again, whether it is abnormal loss or abnormal gain given in the question, no matters whatever is given in the question, the calculation of cost per unit will always be same. The cost per unit is always calculated on expected output. That is my input minus normal loss. चाहे abnormal loss दिया हुआ हो, चाहे abnormal gain दिया हुआ हो. Calculation of cost per unit will be based on expected output only. Very simple. The formula will be the same. The concept will be the same for in all the three cases. That is the total process cost minus the scrap value realized on sale of scrap of normal loss divided by input minus my normal loss. So I repeat again, guys, whether it is abnormal loss, whether it is abnormal gain, the calculation of cost per unit will always be same. And if no information is given as regards normal loss, abnormal loss or abnormal gain, then too also the cost per unit will be same. Because product cost na to inflate hota hai aur na reduce hota hai because of abnormal loss or abnormal gain. When talking about the abnormal gain account, Just right now posting the entries by processor. Now guys, when talking about abnormal gain, we can also say that it is a saving in normal loss. I repeat again, when talking about abnormal gain, we can also say that it is saving in normal. So there is an abnormal loss of, there is an normal loss of 250 units. However, there is an abnormal gain of 100 units. It means what? The net units that are sold in the market will be how much? 250 minus 100. 250 हमें normal loss expect किया था, but abnormal gain हो गया 100 units का. It means what? 150 units are actually sold in the market. So when talking about the units that are actually sold in the market is only 150 units because by abnormal gain. Because 100 units is what? My abnormal gain. I repeat again, there is a normal loss of 250 units. However, there is an abnormal gain of 100 units. So when talking about the actual units that are sold in the market, it's only 150 units that are actually sold in the market. So 300 and 200 will be adjusted in abnormal. So 2 normal loss. How much? 100 units and 200, and balance will be transferred to costing period. That is 183. So abnormal gain, we can say it is a saving in normal loss also. So waiting for your queries, guys. So when talking about abnormal gain, it is 100 into 220.32. That is 20.32. When talking about the finished goods, output 4850 into 20.32. When talking about the process cost, it is 40 plus 30 plus 27, that is 97,000, minus 500, that is my scrap value realized on sale of normal loss, divided by 5,000 is my input, and 250 is my scrap value on sale of normal loss. If any difference, if there is any difference, then that is the rounding of difference, my dear. So if you guys have any doubts in any part, you guys can please post your queries. Waiting for your queries, guys. Yes, everyone, Mr. Syed Yasir Ahmed, anyone having any doubts in whatever I have discussed in this part, in this session, waiting for your queries. We have 10 more minutes. So this 10 minutes will be entirely for the queries you have. So waiting for your queries, guys. Krishna, Darshan, Bhumika, Arunima, Dikshita, Rushita, Kiran Shukla, Jagat Babu Sharma, Syed Yasir Ahmed, Ms. Singh, Rajiv Kumar, Sudhanshu, Rajesh, Mr. Hussain, Miss Hira Hussain. See, guys, this is what the basic part I have discussed in this chapter. My point is very simple, guys. Once you are thorough with the concepts, you can solve any type of question. So this session was more on concepts rather than practical question. So there are two more sessions for process costing. So in these two sessions, I'll be discussing all the practical questions only. So I just want you guys to be prepared, well prepared before starting with the practical questions. So that's why I'm just requesting you, whatever the queries you have, please do post your queries, because in the next session, I just don't want that you guys are like, what is abnormal loss? What is abnormal gain? Why you are doing this? Why you are doing that? Once you start with the full-fledged question, you should be thorough with the concepts, what I have discussed in this session. So waiting for your queries, guys. Okay, so Darshan and Bhumika, the same query. So when talking about abnormal gain, it is what? The saving in normal loss. What is abnormal gain? The saving in normal loss. So herein, my normal loss is of 250 units. When talking about the actual units that are sold in the market, it's only 150 units, because there is an abnormal gain of 100 units. So the units that are sold in the market is how much? Only 150 units. So 150 into 2, 300. So we can call it as the balancing figure. This is transferred to abnormal gain account, that is 2 normal loss, 100 and 200. So this will be the balancing figure. Again, it's bit tricky. I repeat again, abnormal gain is saving in normal loss. So herein, even though my normal loss is 250 units, but there is an abnormal gain of 100 units. So the units that are actually sold in the market is only 150 units. And the amount realized is 300. So the balance 100 units will be adjusted against abnormal gain. So 100 into 2, 200. This is the balancing figure also, you can say. So this will be transferred to abnormal gain, to normal loss account, 100 and 200. So the balance will be transferred to costing P&L. The realizable value will be nil, my dear. If no scrap value is realized, then we will not prepare normal loss account. To process account 250 by abnormal gain, that is the units of abnormal gain. Here in the units will be transferred, and balance amount is to be transferred to costing P&L. Yes, Suman, any doubts? Arunima, Namish Bhatt, Darshan, hopefully your queries are resolved. Yes, Darshan. Thank you so much, Rajesh. Okay, so there is a query. There was a query from Himanshu Pathak in illustration number 4 of study material of contract costing, wherein the value of work not certified is given, not the cost of work uncertified. So guys, do make a note of it that if the value of work uncertified is given in the question straight away, then we will assume that it is the cost of work uncertified. So I repeat again, if the value of work uncertified is given in the question, then we will assume that it is the cost of uncertified work. And further, if the value of work certified is given, it means it is the selling price of the work certified. That is the cost plus the profit element. Yes, Suman, hopefully your query is resolved. Arunima, Nemish Bhatt, Mr. Jagat Babu Sharma, anyone having any doubts, guys? Do you want me to repeat Arunima and Suman? Himanshu, hopefully your query is resolved. Yes, Suman and Arunima. So fine, guys. That's it for the day. Thank you so much for your time and patience. Okay, 1 second. Again, there is a query. Sir, can you please repeat once again the treatment? So Arunima, again repeating it for you. So dear, herein there is a normal loss of 250 units and the value is 500. So two process first account 250 and 500. When talking about abnormal gain, it is 102.03. So the buy process account 102.032. Now, when talking about abnormal gain, it is more or less, we can say it is saving in normal loss. Now, even though there is a normal loss of 250 units, but when talking about the units that are actually sold in the market, it's only 150 units because of these 250 units, there is an abnormal gain. So the units that are actually scrapped is only 150 units. So buy bank 150 units and the amount realized is 300. So balancing figure will be my abnormal gain, that is 100 units and 200 rupees. So this will be transferred to abnormal gain account, to normal loss account 100 and 200. So the balancing figure, that is 2032 minus 200, 1832 is to be transferred to costing P&L. Do try to memorize in this way that abnormal gain is nothing but saving in normal loss. You will be able to understand the account of abnormal gain. So thank you so much, guys, for your time, patience, and let's meet up day after tomorrow with the next part of the chapter, wherein we'll be discussing a full-fledged question plus the questions relating to inter-process profit and work in progress, that is the treatment of work in progress. So thank you so much, guys. See you day after tomorrow. Till then, I request you guys to revise what I have discussed in this class. You won't be able to solve any questions of study material, but at least revise what I have discussed till now. So thank you so much. Be prepared for the next session. Come prepared for the next session. Thank you so much. Take care. God bless you.